Hi, I'm Joshua Finn. Today we are going to build the Fliplock Lite. Normally this is where you see plane in my hands. It's not here right now. That would be because I blew mine up. Pushed it a little too far. You will not have to worry about that problem. So the purpose of this airplane is to replace our existing Fliplock. This is a little heavy, a little unwieldy, very simplified airplane. Pretty innovative, but unfortunately, for the moment, we just have decided it's not quite up to the performance specs we want. Also, this aircraft fills the gap between that and the Switchblade S, so it's going to replace both of those aircraft. Without further ado, let's dig into our parts list. So, when you open your package up, of course, instruction sheet and all is as per the norm. Very limited parts inventory because we're trying to keep this airplane as light as possible. So you've got a left wing and you've got a right wing. There we go. Left, right, like so. Except you can't see that. Let's try that. There they are, left and right wing. Got a set of tail surfaces here. And then you've got your plywood parts. You have, I guess we'll call this a fuselage pod because we'll see why in a minute. Ignore the burnt piece of wood here. That's your pattern for your wing trigger should you need to make another one. And then you've got a carbon fiber tailbone. You've got a nose cone. You've got a body tube. This is cover-right. We'll probably be including polyspan in the kits. But this is hinge material for your right wing. You've got a piece of Kevlar here for your for binding your nose cone in place. This is the wing trigger mechanism, so we'll set that right there. Pack a nose weight, and you've got two little pieces of aluminum tubing, so keep a close eye on those. Get a long one and a short one. Short one is for a little retainer lock. And then this one is for a for your guide for your trigger. Got a plastic bearing for your wings. Got a body tube, or yeah, right, launch lug. This, let's set it right here so you can see. That's your wing axle, and then you've got a piece of rubber for your actuator bands because you've got two of those. So let me get things cleaned up here a little bit, and we'll get started. Okay, so we're going to start here with our wings, and we'll start off with the right wing because it's the more complex one. So what you're going to want to do, and notice there's this little wedge-shaped piece. You'll want to keep track of that. Alright, excuse the background noise. Now remember, this being the right wing, you want to make sure that the R is oriented correctly so that you sand the top of this. Now I'm going to come in here and do this with a razor plane. And we're just going to plane this down. You do not, as per the old Switchblade kit, you do not have to sand this down. I mean, you can fly it just raw and get pretty good performance. But I do recommend at least giving the basic sanding. Let me make sure I'm not going too thin here. The airplane we're building here actually is going to be used for a U.S. record attempt, so I'm trying to sand things as thin as possible, so ignore what I just did there. We'll deal with that later. Come back around the front, and I don't recommend really sanding this part. You can later, there'll be an opportunity to, but right now let's not. And so one pass with this razor plane will probably be enough. Now when I come back in, we're just going to sand everything down. Now my trailing edges are paper thin, yours should not be. Because they will work like that. Like I said, I'm building mine for a 1/4A record attempt, so I'm going a little on the extreme side here. And you just want to take all the razor plane gouges out. Alternatively, you could just round off the trailing edge and not clean this at all. And we'll just come around here and do all this like so. Now your right wing is the one that's going to sit on top in your stack up, so we can sand this area down as much as we want to. I would say wait until after you put the plywood reinforcing to really get into sanding all of that down though. And so all I'm trying to do here is just round off my leading edge, getting, you know, something in an airfoil. These really thin wings, so they don't need a whole lot. And don't sand any of the bottom of this area. Now, before we proceed on this wing, we'll go ahead and we'll pop this wing out and we'll sand it, and then we'll come right back. Okay, so we've got both our left and right wing sanded. I kind of, if you draw like a semicircle around here like this on your left wing, I left that area unsanded because the right wing is going to ride on that. But before we proceed any further, you want to get your this material out, and we're going to fasten this on here after we cut this wing loose and do a little bit of sanding on it. So we'll be right back with a saw. So you take your saw and you line up these three little marks on the wing with the saw here, and we're just going to cut across that, making sure that you leave this hook area alone. So from right there in the crook of the hook, something like that, I don't know. We just cut all the way back like that. You don't really have to cut all the way through, you just kind of crack the wing loose like that. And then all we really want to do here is just kind of clean up this area a little bit. We're going to sand a little bit of a bevel into it. You're not actually setting your dihedral angle this way. The plywood fittings will actually be used to do that. And we'll just clean up this area a little bit. All the flashing out of there. Now flip these over. Now, I highly recommend that you go look at our video on the either the flip-flop or the swing shot for how to do these wing hinges, because if you've got the poly span in the kits, you'll want to use a different adhesive from what I'm doing here. I am doing this a different way, and I've got some reasons because of the way I'm using this model. That I'm going to use CA on it. And if you're using this material, you can do that. I don't recommend it if you haven't tried it before, because this is, if you use CA, it works fine, but there's no margin for error. So shiny side down, because we're upside down, so down is actually this way. So this is the shiny side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and get the CA to come out actually. The nozzle wasn't plugged earlier. Still isn't, just thought it was. I'm going to CA this down. Oh, stop that. This is why I don't recommend doing this if you haven't tried it before, because the stuff likes to stick to your hand more than it does the plane. Whereas if you use balsa rite or something like that, it sticks to the, well, it dries slowly, you've got lots of time to work with it, and all that. So then, let's do a check fit real quick. Everything looks good. A little balsa sliver in there. I didn't do a really clean job of cutting that, so for the record. Anyway, I say for the record, hopefully this will set a record. Alright. Clean out this little bit of the I think I am. There we go. And now I'm gluing it to me. So typical of me. Okay, so now you can see the wing flexes up and down a little bit. And now, what we're going to do, if you look at your plywood parts, there's one that has a little R cut into it. And you go ahead and pop that circle out of it too. May or not still be stuck in there by the time you get yours. And there we go. So this pattern goes on the bottom down here, and so you line up. You got several important areas, so you got to line up the hole, you got to line up the slot, the hooks, and try to line it up on the hinge line while you're at it. Not as critical. And because people have asked in some of the more recent videos, if you hear chirping in the background, those are chicken pullets. So it's September here, we've still got lots of hot weather to go, so it's still chicken season. Hopefully they're all actually females like Tractor Supply said. That has absolutely nothing to do with this video, so it's purely for answering that question only. Alright, now what we're going to do, we've got that one done. We'll come over here and do the same thing on the left wing. Pop all of this out of here. And if you can't tell, over next to me is the youngin', Caleb, as opposed to the other youngin'. Okay, this guy also, there we go, let's try that. Lines up on here, so you line up with the slot, the hook and the hole. And we'll just do the same thing as before. Alright, so CA all on that. And again, this is on the bottom of this wing, so right side up, there both of them are. Alright, and we'll be right back. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to take these two little hooks here. So that one, that looks like a little hook thing. Let me set it there so you can see it. It's tiny. And then this part right here. I'm going to snap it out. I'm going to attempt to snap it out. I just can't get a grip on it, that's all. And that has a little bit of a burr on it. There we go. Okay, there are two ways to orient this. You can put this on this side or on the other side. So, here's what I'm going to show you. You see the orientation of this. You look at where you are here. That slides down in here. Now, if you notice, when I slide this down, it protrudes through the bottom. We're going to have to fix that in a minute. But first, we're going to slot that in, and we're going to glue it. Alright, so so again, you see the orientation. You've got the angled part that sticks out this way. And actually, you have watched me live on video mess something up. I forgot. It only fits on this side, and I'll explain why in a second. Alright. So this part only goes on this side. And the reason for that is the slot for it is closer to the dihedral joint. You make sure it's in there flush. So you want to press it down to where it's flush there. And so now it limits your dihedral. If you put it on this side, that slot is just far enough away that it doesn't come across as well, and so you get too much dihedral. This is the amount of dihedral you want. Now, we'll go ahead and we'll put this other part in. So you can see this part, how it goes in. I'm going to show you before we glue it. That's kind of how it sets in there. Got to clear that out now that I put a whole bunch of glue in there that dried. Alright, so we're going to glue this guy in. You want it to go through the other side. So you want it to protrude through slightly. Alright, so again, you see how this is set up like that. Now, down here on the bottom, the part that you've got exposed, you want to sand it off. You want to sand it off flush. You want to do the same thing. Try and get in here. There we go. Sand that part off flush as well, without sanding through your covering material there. Alright, so it's okay to leave a little bit of this one exposed, just a tiny bit of it, because this is raised up relative to that. But this part you need sanded off nice and flush. I don't know how well that shows up. And again, so we've got this arrangement. Okay, now, right wing goes on top of the left wing, and that's where this is now going to become very important, because what we're going to do is we're going to slot our bearing in. We're going to attempt to slot our bearing in. There we go. Slide it in here, and also into this one, as it goes through both of them. Alright, now, all we're going to do is we're going to glue this guy in here. So with it sitting in here, this is on the right wing again. The right wing goes on top. You cannot put the left wing on top, or this airplane will not fold up correctly, and therefore will not function. Now, what I've done here is I've got a bunch of glue in there, and we don't want that to glue into the left wing, so we have to hit this with some CA accelerator. And now it's together. So I'm going to put this back together. And we just are looking to make sure that these slide freely. Got a little bit of a tight fit of that bearing in there. That can happen if you get a little bit of glue up in there when you glue the plywood reinforcing on. And just, you know, clean sand that off, and you're good. Okay, now we're going to take our little fuselage assembly over here. Pod, whatever you wish to call it, the flavor of the day. And those burrs off of there from the laser tabs, and then in your whatchamacallit, your little parts baggie, you come in here. We're going to pull that little wire elbow out. Now on this fuselage pod, you can see there are these little notches in here. What you actually want to do is you punch through those. So right through the middle of them. And if you want to look at your parts drawing on this airplane, you'll see the same thing. Alright, so I've punched through that. I've come through the middle, top and bottom, so it's lined up. And so what I'm going to do now, I'm going to press that in there. I am going to squirt some glue in here. I'm going to slide this wire up and down in there to get that glue all the way up through that to the other side. And I don't feel that it has done so, so I'm actually going to get some down in here. And we don't want it to wick up on the wire too much, so I'm going to, as I'm hitting this with the accelerator, I'm kind of rubbing it down. And there we go. Now, just as a cross check, we've hit it with accelerator, it's safe to do a test assembly. I slide this down here, and what you notice, you see how the bearing hits the bottom? We don't want that. So come back over here, there we go, and sand your bearing down a little bit. You don't need to sand it a whole lot, just enough that it doesn't rub on the bottom. Like what mine was doing there. And so we're sanding from the bottom there. So we slide the left wing back on. And now we'll do another test fit. Oop, there we go. And now, fits fairly securely. Very nicely. Yeah, that looks good. And so now you can get your first look at your dihedral setup. Now notice it tilts the fuselage there. That's going to come in very important when we assemble the tail. Alright, so we're going to take that part off of there, and we'll come back in just a second. Okay, now we're going to come in here. You see these little reinforcing plates. We're going to go ahead and pop those out. Pop both of them out. Okay, these are slotted. That slot lines up with the slot on this fuselage, so you get this arrangement. You notice you've got a little bit of a gap here. That's okay. The main thing is you want it lined up. That slot, you want those lined up, because you're going to punch something through that slot in here in a minute. And now, before we put the other one on here, something very important we need to do, and that is to slide our carbon tail boom in. Now you will notice, if you look at this, you can see that carbon tail boom is thinner than the fuselage, so you want to be real careful with how you do this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squirt some glue in here. We want this all to be lined up and whatnot. And then we're going to slide this guy in. Attempt to, there we go. And we're going to set it down on the table and move it around in there until it sits parallel on there. Now that we've done that, we can come back in here and we can install the other side. Also, I recommend not doing what you just saw me do, which was to put the glue on the fuselage, put the glue on that side plate, and then put it down. That way you don't get a whole bunch of excess back here. And now, next little hat trick is we're going to take this hook right here, and I'm going to pop it out, sand all the burrs off a bit. And apologies for the upset child in the background. We'll come back here in just a minute. Okay, so on the right side of your fuselage here, we're going to take this hook, we're going to stick it in, and it will fit a little tight. You'll have to kind of clean some of that out in there. This one's fitting particularly tight, probably because all that glue I stuffed down in there. Alright, so let's try that again. Alright, so you can see this is looking from the top here, like so, how that fits. And then we'll come in here and we'll glue this in place. And what you want to do is, if you notice, this surface is kind of angled out this way. It's very slight. It's just enough. That allows you to get that wire in there more easily, because the way this is going to work is this wire guide is going to slide in there, and that slot's just going to limit its travel. Now, at this point, we are going to go ahead and attach our wings in a more permanent fashion. So we're going to slide your wings down on here, like so. And then, what you want to do is find the smaller of your two pieces of aluminum tubing, maybe. Maybe. There it is. And we're going to slide it down on top of there, like so. So you see this piece slides down on top of the wire. Now, you don't want to press this down super hard, but you want to get fairly close. And we're going to take our pliers and we're going to get them down there on top of that piece of metal tubing. We're going to grasp this firmly. We're going to bend it back over. And so now our wings are fairly rigidly secured here. You can see me trying to rock them. They don't rock a whole lot before and aft. And so they lock in like so. And then if we slide them back, this is their launch position. Okay, we'll get it a little closer here in just a moment. And the way we're going to do that, I'm folding them in the wrong direction. They won't come up in that way. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull out our body tube here. We're going to rough up a part of it. Squirt some glue on the top of our fuselage, right there, like so. And we're going to mount this guy in place and make sure that it's parallel. There we go. So you can see how it's mounted there, and like so. So the back of it is flush across here. Now, something I do recommend you do. Well, first of all, let me get this lined up, because I got mine on crooked actually. And if it's crooked, you're actually, you know, like 5 or 10 degrees off. The plane will still fly. It just won't launch as high. And so if you're flying on 1/4A engines, like I'm going to, that's a big deal. On the other hand, if you're flying it on in FAI S4A, you need all the altitude you can get. Those European guys launch high. Alright, so now we're going to, I've got a little burr inside my body tube here. Anyway, we're going to take the glue, the CA glue, and we're going to harden the inside here, so that those over-energetic ejection charges don't burn it up. And I just glued myself to the body tube. There we go. Alright, so having done that, pull out your other body tube, alright, aluminum tube. We'll go ahead and drop out the launch lug too. And what we're going to do is we're going to set this guy in here like so. Turn it around like that. Now, you want to be very careful you do not get glue inside this tube or you're kind of in a pickle. So I've dropped that a little bit of glue there. I'm keeping it away from the open end of the tube, attempting to. The problem is I've got glue all over me. And if you'll notice, it's about a quarter of an inch forward of the back of the tube. And that gives you enough travel for the nose cone to somewhat slow down. I would actually recommend you mount it further forward. I've got a custom nose cone. This is not the one that comes in the kit, so it's got a super short shoulder. Okay, now we're going to take our release pin, slide it in here, and then we're going to slot it through these two notches in the wings. And those notches, I understand, are very, very narrow. That's intentional because they have to be for this to work out correctly. There we go. Alright, so that is locked in place. And now, what we're going to do is about quarter inch out there, and nah, not even that far. Push this thing all the way back, about 3/16 of an inch out in front of the body tube. We're going to bend this up. And don't worry, I'm going to show you a different view of this in a minute. So you can see what I've done there with that. It's all straight up. It's not perfectly straight up and down. You can see how it bends somewhat across the center line. Now, bend that down as best you can. Slide your nose cone in. And then, you can see where we are right here. We're going to punch this straight into that nose cone. And I actually need to go back a little further. This isn't wanting to go in real straight. There we go. You see that? The thing is to make sure that your release pin is firmly into the slots and whatnot. Because if you've got it too far forward on here, the wings will pull free. Okay, there we go. And the reason I'm fiddling with this is I've got a little bit of something trying to pull this thing out of alignment here. Okay. Alright. So, we'll go ahead and we will glue this guy in place up here. We're going to take our Kevlar binding. So this part is just like all of our kits. You wrap the nose cone in Kevlar. And that'll be enough wraps of it. Could be a little tidier. And there we go. Pull this free and completely glue it up. Alright, and we'll be back here in just a minute. Okay, next we are going to take our tail surfaces here. Yours will actually have notches here. So the thing is, you're going to have a center line mark. This little slot needs to be on the left side of your center line. And so this is going to be the top surface of this tail stab. We're going to just come in here and sand this off. I'm going to take mine real thin because I'm trying to keep everything thin and light. You can actually probably get this thing to balance quite well without doing any sanding back here. Sand it down real nice and smooth. And you've watched me make another mistake in this video. Actually broke the tip of the stab. There we go. I have a real problem lately with breaking airplanes during build videos. Okay, now, so we've rounded off the top surface. We're going to flip this guy over. And remember, there was that little wedge piece right here. I'll pop that out. And mine is actually a little on the short side. But anyway, what we want to do is line this up so that it is on, if you're looking from the front, it's going to be on the left side of that notch. In yours there will be these notches up here, and so they will be on the other side of it. Also, yours will be full length stab cord. I'm shortening mine up because this is an early version that is slightly different. Alright, so we're going to do that. And you'll notice that underneath this there's a little mark, laser mark in the stab. We'll come back to that later. Alright, now we're going to pop our vertical stab out, and it is going to go, so we've got our slot in here. It's going to go on the other side, and yours will have tabs, so it'll lock in here real nice. And we can sand the vertical stab off quite aggressively, because its flight loads are comparatively low. So again, we're going to stick this guy in here, like so, and the slot over on this side. and just glue it straight up and down. Now, the next thing is, go ahead and, actually we'll pause real quick, we'll be right back. Okay, before we attach the tail, we want to go ahead and set up our wing deployment. And that's because we're going to use the wing deployment to set the tilt on our tail. So we're going to take this rubber and we're going to come up with a real small rubber band, leave the tags a little bit long on this, because you're going to end up tightening it progressively. And it's very important that, alright, so if you look real closely, you'll see this rubber band crosses over that instead of going under this, and that way it comes up all the way. It won't otherwise. Now that's kind of wimpy. So we're going to grab these two tails on this rubber band and tighten it down some more. A little less wimpy. There we go. That's good. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a rubber band and we're going to run basically from the hook back here to that hole. Get that back around. And that's about a long enough rubber band for this. I've actually made it a little bit shorter. Let's see how it goes. And we'll go ahead and we'll release our trigger mechanism and slide our wings open. Slide this guy through here. Attempt to. So we hook it, maybe. There we go. Hook that on, and then we hook this side. So you now see the wings work correctly. And we'll go ahead and do a quick test run here because it's fun, basically. So there are our wings in place, and out they come. Alright, so you can see we've got our tilt arrangement here. So now, we set this down, and it probably, the rubber band probably will not hold the airplane's full weight here. Yeah, sort of does. So now, this little wedge is what we're going to glue the stab to, but if you, or tail boom to, but if you remember, you've got this little mark. And the mark you want to line up with the end of the boom. So the end of the boom goes right here, not all the way back. So I'm going to turn this around so you can see how I'm doing that. And what we're going to do, I'm going to squirt glue along there. Lock that in. If you wanted to get real creative, you could put something here to level it on. And now it's locked in place. Alright, so next we grab a little hook arrangement deal there. Maybe. You're going to take that and you're going to slot it through the top of the stab. And just as a cross check, this clears, oh, sorry, this clears through here. So that's how you want to glue it. So I'm going to stick it in here and slide it all the way kind of to the back. And it actually comes all the way down through there a little bit. Let's see. Oh, I've got it. And now, if you watch, what we can do is slide our wings through here. They both go through the same slot in it, not the one that's way down against the stab. So like that. And then, if I line up the slots up front, slide this in, and it locks in place, just like that. You see how the tail is tilted, but when it comes open, notice the tail is lined up relative to the wings. Alright, so our last thing, there's my launch lug. I'm going to sand off the top here. Grab my launch lug. Rough it up a little bit as well. And we'll set it in place. Then, alright, and we'll be back in just a moment. Okay, now the next thing you want to do, we're going to fold this all back, and you'll understand why in a second. But you want to do that before you insert an engine casing. This is a spent engine casing. The airplane will not balance for glide without that. These weigh about 3 grams for reference. So what you're going to do is you're going to slide this engine casing in here, and mine fits a little tight, so let me take a little bit of tape off of it. And that is as far as that casing slides in before it contacts the front. And on yours it actually won't even slide in that far. Okay, so then, just because it's fun, we'll release the wings again, but also because we need to CG this airplane. So we're going to set this down here on a glider balancer. Kind of a shameless plug for a product here at J&H Aerospace. And so what I'm going to do is grab this. I'm going to try to. And this is where my CG is, so it's ahead of that little wing pivot, if you see that. So that's about between an inch and 3/4 of an inch ahead of the or behind the leading edge of the wing. That's where it's balancing without any ballast. So we'll see how it goes from there. So I'm going to have my wife take over on recording here in a minute. Okay, so no changes yet. We're just going to give this a test flight. Ow. That was a hard impact. However, let me give this a glide across a different angle here. Let's see here. And that looks good, other than banging itself out to death. Okay, so that's where my CG lies. You notice I didn't have to do any adjustments or anything. If you're at that balance point and the airplane's diving, kind of crack the trailing edge, bend it up a little bit, or do our little tab arrangement. If you look at the how to trim chuck gliders and catapult gliders video, you'll see how we glue strips to the top to correct diving, so it makes the plane, gives the plane up elevator. If it's stalling, we'll put them on the bottom, get some nose down. But that CG location works pretty good. If you're farther forward of that, you've got 2 options. I mean, if you're even this far from the leading edge, you can just add some up elevator if you don't want to add a bunch of weight. If you're flying this thing on 1/4 A's, I mean, you're wanting to avoid weight as much as possible, because even a nose-heavy glider that's inefficient in its pitch trim is better than one that has extra weight. Because 1/4 A engines have so little energy. If you're flying on A engines or whatever, ballast or up, it's not going to hurt it. You've got lots of extra power to play with. So with that, oh, one other thing, if you're flying it on A engines, you can paint it and whatnot, no issue. I mean, just a thin coat of paint, and maybe even a little bit of dope beforehand. Flying on half A's, just a fine misting of paint. On 1/4 A's, just anyway, questions, comments, put them in the comments section below, and we'll see you later. Caleb, do you have any remarks? Go look at the camera. Look at the camera. Say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
Okay, we'll see y'all later. Bye.